Okay, so your database together with your database management system, everything is shut into a database, but everything is a database system. So some databases you can connect to in Power BI include SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, Sybase, Google BigQuery, Access. Of course, there are many more database types you can connect to, but those are just examples that I highlighted. Now, when you are connecting to a database, you can do it in two ways. So you go to So I'm sharing my Power BI screen now. So you can, to connect to a database, you go to File and click on Get Data. Your most common data sources will appear by default. If you click on Get that data to get started, then it brings up a dialog box. There are 6 different data sources. We have file, database, Power Platform, Azure, online services, and others. But our focus is on database. And as I mentioned earlier, there are quite a number of database types that you can connect to. So you can connect to SQL server database, you can connect to SQL analysis database, IBM, different IBM databases. You can connect to Amazon Redshift, Snowflake. So there are a number of database types you can connect to. But for the purpose of this class, we are connecting to.
Ma, we are unable to see the dialog box that opened up.
Can you see the Power BI screen that I'm sharing?
Yes, but not the dialog box that opened up.
Okay, I'll attempt it again.
Yeah,
So you go
sorry,
to.
sorry. If can you kindly share your screen and not just Power BI? That would also help us to always see what you're doing. If you share your screen instead of the app, the software instead.
Okay. So can you see this screen that I'm sharing now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So go to File and click on Get Data. So there are different data sources. For the purpose of this class, we are connecting to SQL Server database. That's because that's what I have installed on my system, but it's the same, it's similar processes for the different databases. So I'm going to open, first I'm going to show you what my database looks like. So you'll see what I have on the database. I have just one database, just one table there. So I'll just show you what it looks like at the back end, and then you have an idea of what you're
Sorry,
connecting
ma.
to from
Which
Power BI.
which database did you click on?
I'm using SQL Server Management Studio. I've not clicked on anything from Power BI. I'm just trying to open SQL.
Okay.
Yes. I want to show you how the data looks like on SQL. So I'm going to mute. Okay. I'm going to mute anybody that is not speaking right now. Should have done that first. Okay. So this is my SQL Server Management Studio. This is my server name, SQL Express, and my authentication type is Windows. Of course, I think you are going to be taught something on databases, but this is what just my preference. If I click on connect, it just gives me the list of all the database that I've created in the past under Object Explorer here. So if I click on databases, I have sales test, which I created for the purpose of this class. Sales test is my sales underscore test is my database, and the tables that I created under sales underscore tests, I think there are about 4 or 5 of them. It's taking so long. Okay, I don't know why it's taking long. So to connect to my SQL, the SQL server, you click on, can you see my Power BI screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you click on SQL server and click on connect. So what it does is that it allows you to enter, it asks for your server name. And in this case, my server name is SQL Express, but I need the entire server name. Depending on where you work, some organizations might give it different names. It's also possible that you are connecting to a remote system and you've been given a port number instead of a server name. So I'm just going to come and enter my server name here, and my database is optional for me to enter database, but I want a specific database, that's sales underscore test. So I'll come here and type my database name and click on OK. So what it does is that it connects directly to my database. So it should load all the tables in that database. Yes, so these are the tables I wanted to show you on this. Okay, so on this is my SQL, my Microsoft SQL interface. The tables are created as CA sales, country, DE sales, FR sales, MX sales, and product table. So these are the same tables that will appear. So the number of tables you have on your database, also the number of tables that will show up when you're trying to connect. I want to add all my tables. I want to connect to all the tables for the purpose of this visualization, or for the purpose of this lesson. But it also includes a sys diagram. This sys diagram is, we don't need the sys diagram there, so I'll just ignore it. But I have my product table. When you click on any of the table, it shows you how the table looks like from the database end. So I have my product ID, I have product name. Then this table is related to other tables. It's related to the CA sales table, related to the DE sales table, FR sales table, MX sales table. That's why we have all those other tables here as columns. If you click on the MX sales table, it shows you everything under MX sales table. And as you can see also, it's related, you'll see country TBL, product TBL, because this MX sales table is related to the country table and the product table. So I'm just going to click through all the tables I want to connect. Then the next thing to do is to click on transform. Now I can choose to load all these tables directly, but the advantage of transforming your data is that your data is shaped to specifications. So if you want some columns as text instead of numbers, or you want them as numbers instead of text, or you want some columns as dates or longitude or latitude, you can do so by transforming data, by clicking on transform data. You can delete columns that you're not using. Maybe your table is really large, but out of all the columns in the table, you need maybe 2 or 3 columns from your table. you can transform the data by deleting it. That does not mean that your table, your original source file, when you change anything from Power BI, that does not mean that the content of your original source file will be modified. It just does it in under Power BI's interface. So I'm going to click on transform data because I want to transform all the data that I'm importing. So let's start with CS sales. So my I have a product key that is CS sales ID. For some reason, Power BI is seeing it as text instead of numbers. So I want to transform that to numbers. So I'll click on transform and data type. Then I select the data type I want, the preferred data type, that's whole number. So it changes that. As you can see, it changes what we have here. Then product ID, I can leave it that way. I can leave my dates this way. I can leave my zip as text, but I want my unit to be whole numbers. I want my revenue. Yes, my revenue is in decimal number. My country ID is in whole numbers. I don't want this country TBL and this product TBL columns. So I'll click on both of them. I go to home and I click on remove columns. For every step you take under when you're trying to transform your data, Power BI actually records it so that you can go back to those steps and undo or see what you have done. So for instance, if I click on, if you can see the applied steps here, there is source. It means that it loaded my table, navigation, change type. That's all the steps I took to change the different data types from one column to another. Then removed column, that's all the columns that I deleted some minutes ago. If I delete that, if I click on this X, it will undo the step I did, but I'm just going to do that again. So remove columns. I want to do this process for almost all my tables. So my products table, I don't need these CA sales. I don't need these 4 tables there, these 4 columns. So I'll remove those. For MX sales, I'll convert this, go to transform, data type, convert it to a whole number. Country and products. So just similar process for every table that I have. Whole number, country, product. So phone number, country, products. So I've just deleted all the things that I don't want. Added, changed data type and everything. So those are all the transformation I want for my data type. So I'll go to under file, there's close and apply. Click on close and apply. What it does is that it applies all the changes I've done. It applies it to my data set, and if there are any errors, it's going to indicate that there are errors. So it's applying the query changes. Just have to wait. So this is taking quite a while. And if it can take this long for so it's importing all the rows of table, all the rows of data I have. So if it can take this long for a database that isn't so large, then you can imagine how long it might be, especially if your RAM is not very fast or not very powerful. But one of the advantages of using Power BI is that it's able to load millions of rows of data. So there are times that I've seen a setup where we had to load about 30 million rows. It took almost a whole day. So we just connected to the database and went away, and then came back to it days later. So as soon as it's done, so it has loaded all the tables. So when all the tables are loaded successfully, it shows you on the field pane, you'll see all the different tables. That's CS sales. As you can see, these are the fields, the CS sales ID, the country ID, date, product ID, revenue, unit zip. And because the files they're similar, they're almost the same thing. So that's just a simple way to connect to a database. Let me see if there are any other thing I missed. Okay. So after connecting to a database, the next thing to do, as explained in the last class, after connecting and after shaping your data, then you can begin visualizing. There are quite a number of, so this process I just went through is for Microsoft SQL database. If you want to connect to, let me see. If you want to connect to a website or any other, okay, if you want to connect to a standard database like Microsoft SQL, any standard database, you need to make sure that the system you are connecting to or the server you are connected to is properly installed and configured. So if I wanted to connect to MySQL, for instance, on this laptop, I have to make sure that I have my SQL installed on this laptop, and it's going to be the same process. So it's going to ask me for my server name and my database name. If I want to connect to, let me see, I don't have Oracle. I don't think I have Oracle on this system. But if I want to connect to Oracle database and I click on connect, it's going to tell me that, so this is the error is going to pop up. That's because I don't have Oracle data client installed on this system. For a system that needs connection to Oracle database, or yes, to Oracle database, you need Oracle data client like Toad. I think Toad is the most, I don't know if there is any other one, but that's what we use at Octave to connect to Oracle database. So now that I've connected to my database, I can do anything I want to my data sets. So when the database connected, it detected relationships between the data sets. If you notice it, there is country ID consistent through all the tables. So there's country ID and there is product ID. So it has automatically detected and because there's a country table and there's country ID on that table, and there's product table and there's product ID. So what Power BI did was that it automatically detected the relationships between the different sales table and the product table and the country table. So for instance, this is the country table, and this is the product table. Let me put it in the middle. So we have country table and product table. When you hover on any of the relationship lines, it tells you the type of relationship between the tables. So, or it tells you which of the columns are related to one another. So in this instance, country ID under country table is related to country ID under sales table. If I right click, I can delete the relationship, or I can view the properties. So if I click on properties, as you can see, it has what is highlighted here is country ID, and what is highlighted here is country ID, and it's a many to one relationship, meaning that this country ID on this table has many relationships with different tables, but the country ID on this FR sales table has one relationship with the country table. So if I click on this pane, we have reports, we have model, we have data, and we have model. The model is where you see the relationships between the different tables, but the data pane is where you see the back end, like the Excel version, like your Excel version of your table. So we have the CS sales ID, we have the product ID. This is exactly how your table will look like if it were in an Excel table, or if you were to view the Excel backend. From this end, you can also do a lot of formatting. So if I click on dates, maybe I don't want my dates to be in this long format. I want it to be in a short format, like day, month, and year, or month, day, and year, or any other thing. I can just simply change how my date looks like here. So that's fine. The sales date. I want it to be day, month, year. So I want to do a simple visual. So if I want to display a table that has country and products. So I come to the visualization pane here. Under this visualization pane, there are different kind of charts you can choose from. You have stacked bar charts. When you hover over each one of them, it shows you the kind of charts you can see. There is stacked chart, there is stacked column, there is clustered bar charts, donuts, there is heat map, tree map, you have shape field map, there is map, there's filter or slider, matrix. So I want to just have an overview of what my table looks like if I'm just plotting something. So maybe I want here I want my country name, another CA sales. Remember that country country ID is what is the relationship between CA sales and country table. So maybe for each country, I want the total revenue. So because this CA sales is for Canada only, it only gives me the revenue for Canada. So maybe I want my dates. So it's going to give me, this is how Power BI gives you your dates by default. So long as it's saying it as a date column. So it gives you other values. It gives you your year, it gives you quarter, month, and day. You can then select which one you want to show or which one you don't want to show, or you can select, or you can deselect date hierarchy. If you just choose dates, it just shows in the default format. But I want my month to show, so I'm going to click on month. I don't want my quarter to show, so I just want, so this is like a monthly breakdown of my revenue for Canada. And I can replicate this across the different tables. But if I want to change this visual, maybe I don't want it to be a table, I want it to be maybe a stacked bar chart, I can just come and click on bar chart, and then it changes it. I want my revenue to be my legend here. I want my dates to be my legend, not my revenue. So I want my month to be my legend. Or maybe I want my month to be on the axis. And I want it broken down by date. So I drag my legend. So that's just a simple way of connecting to a database. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me. Hello, does anybody have any questions for me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. So do you guys have any questions? Do you want me to go over the steps again?
Yes, appreciate that.
Okay. So I'll go over it again. I wanted to show you the back end of my MySQL before. So here it is, here it is again. So this is my database source. I have my SQL server running, and I have this database in sales test. These are the different tables. If I open, so this is how my table looks like. The columns, the different column names, the data type for CSLs. So this is how it looks like on the back end. However, maybe I select my top 1,000 rows. This is how it looks like. product ID, the date, and the date is in a long format. You have the zip, the units, the revenue, and the country ID. So this is what look like on the back end. With the way it looks like, you can select, you can choose what to select and everything. Visualize it properly. You can take
I think your network is a bit bad. Your network is a bit bad. I can't hear you, man.
that from your database when you look, yes, you have a database, but you can't take the way if you know all the select statements you're meant to do, you're meant to use. You can't really take any decisions from the back end, but Power BI allows you to take decisions based on the visuals you've done. Can you hear me better now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to go over how to connect to a database again. So open Power BI, you can go to File and Get Data, or you can choose Get Data from your menu. For the purpose of this class, I'm connecting to Microsoft SQL database, that's SQL Server. Click on Connect. I'll enter my server name. I think that was the last thing I pasted, and my database name. Let's see, is that correct? Yes, and I click on OK. So it's import. So these are the tables that are on my database. I want to shape them to my taste before I do anything with them. So I'll click on transform data. So it's when you click on transform data, it loads your Power Query editor. From a Power Query editor, you can transform your data, you can add columns, you can do a whole lot of things under Power Query editor. So what I want to do is I want to change the data types for some of my columns, and I want to delete some columns that I don't need. So all the CA sales, all the sales ID that make up the product ID, I want to convert them to I want to convert all my product IDs to I want to convert them from text data type to whole number. So that then I'm deleting these two columns. Remove columns. So country table. Remove columns. These cells. Transform data type. Whole number. Home. Remove columns. MX cells. Transform data type. Whole number. Number. Remove columns. Product table. I don't want all these columns showing. Okay. So when you are done with shaping your data, you go to under file, you go to close and apply, and it loads your tables. After your table loads, then you see all the tables. So the tables I loaded were CSL. You can explore them through the tab here. So as you can see, these are what we have under the data sets for CSL. Any of the tables, you can see what you have under each of the tables. Another model, you can see how the tables are related to one another. One thing that is in all the tables is the country ID and the product ID, and all related to this country table. It looks a bit complex, but it's just a relationship diagram showing relationship between different tables. So, for instance, this country table makes sales, and when the arrow or the line that connects the two of them, you will see the columns that are related to one another. So in this case, country table is related to MX with the country ID. FR sales is related to country table with the country ID. Then we also have another relationship here, and I think that's for the product table. Okay, so I have my product table here. So as you can see, product table is also related. So the reason for this is because product ID and country ID is consistent through all the tables. And when you select on any of the arrows and click on properties, you can see the kind of property or the kind of relationship. So for instance, between DE sales table and product table, the product ID, they are the columns that are related to one another, and that's why they're in gray. Then it's a many to one relationship, which means that product table is related to many other tables like DE sales, like MX sales, but DE sales is related to only product table with the product ID. You can delete the relationship if you feel like that relationship shouldn't exist. You can delete it. So I go back to my report pane. I want to see just like a quick overview. So what's the revenue from CS sales? You can use a table. You can use any kind of visual you like. I always prefer to start with a table because it gives me an idea. That's how it looks like on Excel or any other database anyway. So it gives me an idea of what my columns and my rows looks like. Sometimes it's useful for me also because it helps me check that I'm not making any mistake. So if I click on revenue, the table will automatically sum my revenue. So this is my total revenue for Canada because it's CA sales. I'm assuming it's Canada. So my total revenue is CA sales. For CA sales is 34. I can add my country name. So whatever field you want on any visual, you can just come and click on it. You can just click on whatever field, or you can drag it and drop it to this pane here. So this pane is for field pane, that's your values. This for format, so you can format your visual any way you want. And then this is for advanced features like analytics features. So on this table, I have my revenue. So I want to see how my revenue looks like by dates. So I just drag my dates. By default, any dates column will be divided into hierarchy of year, quarter, month, and day. So maybe on this table, I only want to see my quarterly. I don't want month or day. I just want quarter. So it just gives my different quarters. Or maybe I just want to see my dates. Instead, it gives me my dates. I can, if I don't like how my date looks like, I can come to modeling and change how my date looks like. I can do it under the data pane. I can also do it under modeling. So what I did in my previous explanation was changing it from data pane. So you go to data, click on whatever table you want to change here and click on format and select the date type. In Nigeria, we use day, month, year. So I'm going to change it to day, month, year. You can also change this when you're transforming your data. You can also do this change, but it's okay to do it here as well. So I've changed my date type for FR of sales. I want to do the same for every other one, day, month, year. Bear in mind that when you are transforming your data, whatever transformation you do on Power BI end does not reflect on your raw data. So Power BI can only, if you just load the data to its own end, but it does not do anything, doesn't change anything.
I have a question.
Okay.
If actually I populate my SQL server and
Yes.
if I should come to my this particular visualization I'm doing and I just refresh, will it actually automate the data?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So under file, under query, the queries tab under home, I think this is home here. This is home. You can refresh. So what it does is that it connects to your data source and it refreshes. So let me do something. So I have created so under for my country, for instance, there are only I think there are only 4 countries. So we have France, Mexico, Germany, and Canada. But I go to my data source with SQL. So I want to insert into my country table. Maybe I insert, I don't know if this will work. Let me say I insert Nigeria. I'm not sure this will work because I did not set I didn't set my country to auto increment, but let's see. Insert into table country name. Okay, cannot insert no, so I have to insert a country ID. Okay, so let's say this is, let me give it an ID of 6. And I give this Nigeria. Okay, so it has inserted, as you can see, one row affected, so it has inserted, let's see, let's do a select from. So there's Nigeria here as my number 6. So home. So it loads all the tables again from the beginning. It has seen a 5th row here under country. So it's loaded automatically. Nigeria. Can you see it has loaded Nigeria? So it does a real-time refresh. I don't know who asked me the question, but does this answer your question? Hello, does this answer your question? I can't remember who asked me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so who else has any other question? Does anyone have any other question? Okay, so I'm going to assume nobody has any other question, and I can end the class. Is it okay for me to end the class? Do you guys want to ask me any other question or do any other thing? You guys, I know you guys are anxious to start visualizing. That's the next class, so that will be the next class.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, ma. The class was very insightful.
Ma.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Okay.
I don't know how you guys. You have a question?
Yes, I would just like to ask that,
Okay.
while you were doing this today's exercise,
Yeah.
I personally I was finding it difficult to follow, probably because the data sets were not made available so that we could actually
Okay.
see the things that you were doing. So I don't know, probably in subsequent classes, if it's possible for you to, make the data set available to us so that as we are working, we'll also be working on
You
our
can.
system. And
Okay,
should we run into any challenge, we can call your attention to it.
Okay, that's a good feedback. So this is the data set I actually plan to use all through this class. So I'm going to send this to you. I can't remember. I think, okay, I'll send it to Emmanuel and he'll send it to you. So,
Okay.
so
Thank
yeah.
you. Yes, ma'am.
And since this class is recorded, I think you can always go through the class to know, like you can always go to the recording to know what I have done. But I'll also send this PowerPoint file that because that was what I used to go through the steps of connecting to a database.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye, guys. Ebube, Adetoro, you guys should leave the class now. Resta. Yes, yes. Look like who does that first. Don't see.
I didn't see. I guess they have finished the class.